I know. I know what you mean.
But the next section you have to come to the boss. Het is op internet.
I am excessively, disregard of these things, but I know that I should be careful. One day I'm going to be caught, especially because I say things that I should not say.
Yeah, no, that's it.
We were in Mexico. It was the Pilots Association on the world. They were giving a presentation on the new fuels and pilots. So they were worried about the mass automated shipping, mass bombing, what is the so they were asking me saying, no, it seems that I am pushing. We are in a position where we cannot just disregard the proposal of any member state. And on the other side, we are promoting the career system. And on the other side, it looks weird. But we cannot disregard the proposal. And they want to create conversations, but they want to create a code. And it doesn't work. The Secretary General at that moment was outside taking photographs.
ครับผมสวัสดีทุกท่านนะครับก็ครับเป็นตามตัวเบอร์ทุกคนเลยนะครับเดี๋ยวขออนุญาตอธิบายเรื่องที่เราจะไปทัวร์ในท่าเรือช่วงเช้าครับรถจะออกจากที่นี่9 โมงครับแต่ว่ารบกวนพี่ๆทุกท่านขึ้นมารอที่ห้องนี้ก่อนก็เราก็ได้ลงทะเบียนตอนเช้ากันด้วยนะครับเสร็จแล้วพอก่อนออกปุ๊บก็จะมีทีมงานนะครับพาพี่ๆไปขึ้นรถนะครับแต่ว่ารบกวนทุกท่านเปิดเข้าไปดูในไลน์กลุ่มนิดนึงนะครับมันจะมีเอกสารฉบับนึงนะครับที่เขียนว่ารายชื่อของผู้ที่คือเป็นการแบ่งรายชื่อที่ขึ้นรถจะมี2 คันนะครับรถจะมี2 คันครับก็รบกวนพี่ๆทุกท่านเปิดเข้าไปดูนะครับว่ารายชื่อตัวเองอยู่รถคันไหนนะครับจะได้ขึ้นรถถูกแต่ว่าจากห้องประชุมนี้ไปถึงรถก็จะมีทีมงานพาไปเลยครับเป็นบริเวณด้านหน้าตึกครับเชิญครับเดี๋ยวสักครู่นึงเดี๋ยวท่านผมขอปรึกษากับทางทีมผู้จัดก่อนนะครับมีคนไม่มีรายชื่อด้วยใช่ไหมครับอ๋อโอเคครับเดี๋ยวถ้าไงเดี๋ยวผมมาเรียนอีกทีนะครับขอปรึกษาก่อนนะครับแต่ว่าเข้าใจว่าส่วนใหญ่น่าจะมีชื่อหมดแล้วนะครับ
Tomorrow we will meet here first and then we will go together with the class.
โอเคครับก็เดี๋ยวเซสชั่นบ่ายนะครับแล้วก็จะต่อจากช่วงที่สแตนดาร์ดค้างคาไว้เมื่อช่วงก่อนพักเบรกนะครับโอเคที่เราเรียนรู้
We shall just proceed with the chapter 6, CPU properties. Thank you. 6.1 it says, when planning a consignment for transport, the shipper should ensure that the best CTU suited for the transport should be selected. Packers should be familiar with the CTU's net mass capacity, flooring strength, anchor and securing points, thermal capabilities, sealing, and weatherproofness. We shall just see all the types of containers as much as possible now, according to the types. ISO norms are available for containers mostly, standardizes the external and internal dimensions for most of the freight containers. ISO standards. General purpose containers, dry one, DV, we call them standard containers, 20 foot, 10 foot, 40 foot, 45, high cube American containers, etc. Ventilated containers on the right. Open top containers have no permanent rigid roof, okay? They have flexible and movable or removable cover. They are designed for cargo that is too heavy or difficult to load. Open-side containers have a curtain or canvas on one or both sides, a rigid roof and rear doors. Open-side containers are not covered by ISO standards because they are not durable at the sides. You see, they are open-side. They are used for loaded using a fork truck, typically pallets and long packages. Thermal containers, also called reefers, designed for the transport of cargo under temperature control, generally not equipped with anchor and lashing points. If required, some T-section gratings can be added for lashing purposes. Platforms and platform-based containers, they are characterized by having no side superstructure except either fixed or collapsible end walls within flat racks, as we shall see. Here we see, no, we don't see here. Without any superstructure, platforms are here, and we see flat racks here. You see flat racks are now the major project cargo transport equipment. What do we mean with project cargo? Secured cargo only, not stowed from wall to wall. They are individual cargo that has to be lashing inside, together with the blocking. We have to have strong lashings for project cargo. Collapsible end walls allow the flat rack to be efficiently stacked on top of each other so that it can be transported easily when empty. And they have strong lashing points, the flat racks, so that they are used widely in project cargos. Individually secured machines, transport vehicles, etc. There are general purpose containers. You see this color slides I get from the informative material part. IM.3 named cargo containers such as double height car carrier, livestock carrier, or genset container. What is a genset? A genset generator set is a generator unit that attaches to a reefer, refrigerated container, and is used for perishable goods, being transported overseas or on a truck. Special purpose containers, coil carriers, you see the bedding for the coil, because generally the one coil is over 10,000 kilograms. Around that, it's very heavy. It should be secured, really good and proper. So to easy that, we have some beddings in some special purpose containers for coils. Again, special purpose containers, dry bulk containers. They are also ISO 1496 Part 4 standardized. Box type ones, you see, BK2s, remember? Bulk container 2 type. They have either letterbox type hatch in front wall, like this and this, or flap type hatch in rear doors. And also we have hopper type dry bulk container for horizontal discharge. Special purpose containers, we have tank containers and portable tanks. As we have mentioned before at part 6, chapter 4.3 and 6.7, it comprises two basic elements. One is the tank shell, you see, the tank itself, with the ISO standard, and the framework equipped with corner fittings, rendering the tank suitable for intermodal transport, either on a container ship, on board a container ship, or on a wagon with the railway transport, or either on a truck, so that it could be transported on a truck on road. Okay, so it's used easily for the with the frame, complying with the requirements of the CSC. What was CSC? Convention for Safe Containers. Frame tank, beam tank with no top rail, and also collar tank, which is the simplest design. Again, informative material 3, regional, domestic or offshore containers. Regional containers are have no international maritime legs where the container is not expected to be lifted using a standard container handling equipment. Domestic or national containers for use between ports in national borders, so they are not international again. Regional domestic containers do not need to fulfill the ISO container requirements. Offshore containers, as Captain Ufelan told us yesterday, are for transporting goods and equipment in open seas to and from between fixed and floating installations, and they are subject to MSC Circular 860. CSC does not necessarily apply to offshore containers. Special purpose containers, we are continuing with flexi tanks. The flexi tank is, placed in a container to carry bulk, liquid bulk, sometimes solid bulk as well. Do you know, which I will come to that, but do you know why we didn't mention it in the IMDG code? We didn't mention it in the IMDG code, the flexi tanks. Why can it be that we didn't mention? I will come to that. Just wait for a few slides, okay? I will give you the answer. You think, meanwhile, we have barriers and some linings because the liquid inside, goes forward and backwards. There's a huge movement inside the tank, and it has to be really secured. It could be dangerous. Special purpose containers, swap bodies. These are used in some European region, mostly. Transport within Europe complying with the European standards, therefore not needing to fulfill the ISO container standards. There are 3 types, class ABC, generally used, designed for road and rail transport within Europe. Road trailers are used in ro-ro ships and are loaded, unloaded, and moved in port areas only, road trailers. The cargo should be secured on a road trailer entirely by lashings. Some also have locking devices for the securing of freight containers and swap bodies. Now we come to road vehicles. Very detailed knowledge is available in informative material 3. The road vehicles are with closed superstructures, and they are very useful for primary choice for cargo that is sensitive to rain, snow, dust, sunlight, theft, and easy access. Because they have enough securing points with clamps, and also they are all closed superstructures. I will show you some different types. Flatbed, this one, for example, used for almost any cargo, but the goods must be protected because it's open. Drop side, here you see, like a flatbed, but with fold down partial height, side and rear panels. Tilt trailer, like this one, like a flatbed, but with a removable PVC canopy. Curtain sider are like this ones, trailers. The sides are fabric curtains that can be opened for easy loading. Open top trailer. Box trailer, of course, a secure option for valuable goods. We have also road trains, a rigid vehicle at the front which pulls a trailer behind it. We call it road train or road Qatars. We call it Qatar, road Qatar, which reminds me here the barges I see down at the river. One just secured to each other, just together with, this is the road version of that. Low loader. This is a very interesting one because we can put some swap bodies because it's a low loader. It is set low to the ground for easy loading of other containers or some other CTUs. Vans are here, for smaller cargos, and container carriers, flatbed, extendable or skeletal trailers. Platform trailers for the container to be secured on top. We have also tankers for road. Railway wagons, we have different types. When we look at the wagons, we can divide them into two different groups. In intermodal transport, the wagons are used for two different purposes. Either as a carrier unit to transport other CTUs like this, you can put on the platform wagon the CTUs, the containers, GPs, or tankers, or trucks. Now it is used as a carrier unit, like this one, flat wagon. Or as a CTU themselves, like the closed wagons here, open wagons, you know, and they can be carried by special rail ferries. Now we come to Annex 2, safe handling of CTUs. CTUs are designed for intermodal transport. They are capable to be transferred from one mode to transport to another by rolling, either rolling on wheels or by lifting. You know, transfer by rolling on wheels, a freight container can be carried on a vehicle, on wheels. On a road vehicle, a railway wagon, an inland barge, or a seagoing vessel. A road vehicle can be carried on a railway wagon, on an inland barge, or on a seagoing vessel, again, ro-ro ship, or may be rolled onto a ship driven by its own engine. You can carry on a container in different transport modes. The railway ferries are equipped with several rail tracks which can be accessed by a movable ramp fitted with rails, capable to be connected to the rail tracks on board, you see. and the maximum permissible kink angle, it is called this angle, between the ramp and the level of the rail deck in the ship is restricted. Even it could be as low as 1.5 degrees. When we come to transfer by lifting, lifting of containers, of course, is very important for us. We should refer to ISO 3874 for lifting of containers. A top lift spreader, you will see that, is the most appropriate method to lift a freight container. The spreader is locked by twist locks to the top of the container fittings of freight container and used for all freight container sizes fitted with top corner fittings in an empty state or packed state. When the spreader cannot be attached directly to the corner fittings, for example, overheight cargo, slings or chains can be used and connected to the spreader. We have different types for lifting containers. Crane operation, as you very well know, top lifter operation, reach stacker operation, side lifter operation, forklift operation. Where there are no fork pockets, the freight container should not be lifted by forks in any state. The CTU code warns us. Operation with grappler arms. This is mostly used to transport from rail to road. The CTU from rail to road, road to rail, mostly. Operation with chains or slings. Bottom lift sling, you see from the bottom, the sling holds the container. Or top lift sling. But there is one point one has to be careful with the top lift sling. Using only a four-legged sling like this without a spreader is not recommended because every lift can lead to the instant breaking of the container. We should have this spreader to uniformly spread the weight distribution. Lifting of wagons. Railway wagons may be lifted and may change bogies when the railway ferry operates between countries where the track gauge is different. You know, the track gauge in the Europe mostly, it's 1,435 millimeters in RID. But in Spain, it's a bit more, and in Russia, it's also in between 1,520 millimeters. So, in such cases, railway wagons should be suitable for easy exchange of bogies. You know, bogies. The involved ferry ports provide specific equipment for this operation. Now we come to chapter 7, CTU suitability. Which CTU is good for which cargo? All cargo which is sensitive to weather conditions or against theft should be enclosed sheeted CTUs, freight containers, closed or sheeted swap bodies, semi-trailers, other road vehicles like this are suitable. Single packages such as cartons stacked by hand, drums, any kind of palletized cargo like this can be packed and preferably stowed from boundary to boundary. We call it a tight stow. From boundary to boundary, a tight stow. Depending on the type of CTU, it should be checked if additional securing, like lashing or locking or using friction increasing material we shall see according to the type of cargo and also the CTU. Cocoa or some other humidity-sensitive agricultural products against climatic effects specific to long-distance sea transport may be damaged when the humidity is effective in the CTU. Then specially designed containers with increased ventilation should be preferred. Certain foodstuffs, we call them perishable cargo a few minutes ago, in particular deep frozen products require transport at low temperatures, and sometimes certain chemicals need to be protected from frost on the opposite side. So insulated and temperature controlled CTUs, which can be refrigerated or heated as appropriate, should be used for such commodities. Heavy items such as granite and marble blocks may also be packed into closed containers. However, this cargo cannot be stored from wall to wall. So, bracing and blocking against the frame of the CTU like this and or lashing to the securing points is necessary. However, the lashing capacity of the securing points, in general GP freight containers, are limited. So preferably we should use platforms or flat racks for this purpose like this. Heavy cargo items of extreme dimensions may not fit inside the CTU, thus we can just store them and secure them on a platform or a flat rack, again, like this. They are called, in this position, project cargos. When the cargo is only over height, but not over width, an open top CTU may be suitable. Liquid and solid bulk cargoes should be transported in tank CTUs or solid bulk CTUs equipped with liners. Some cargoes, as scrap metal, are usually handled by grabs or conveyors, and when a conveyor is unavailable, the only suitable CTU type is an open top CTU capable of being loaded with grabs. General purpose CTUs are not suitable for certain long, heavy, irregular cargo like this. Such cargo should preferably be carried only on platform or flat rack CTUs. Portable tanks shall not be offered for transport with the residue of the substances previously transported adhering to the outside of the shell when leaking or damaged, unless in good working order with a degree of filling. I have now come to IMDG code, part 42196. I couldn't show you yesterday. This is from IMDG code. We have a tank, you see. There's a rule. If the tank is not divided to partitions smaller than 7,500 liters, we cannot fill the tank in between 20% and 80%. This should be empty. Either we shall fill up to 20% or over 80%. This is a rule, for example, with 8,250 liter tank. But if the tank is smaller than 500 liters, we can do that. The same applies when we see it Annex 7 in the CTU code. Non-regulated liquids in tank CTUs, it says that a filling ratio of maximum 20% is also accepted, and also the tank should be filled at least 80% of their volume for avoiding dangerous surging in the tank. But if the tank has partitions or itself smaller than 7,500 liters, then we can just dismiss this provision. A filling ratio of more than 20 and less than 80% should only be permitted with the tanks smaller than 7,500 liters, because then the tank is smaller and the surging will be less dangerous during transport. Now we come to some certain conditions. Liquid bulk cargo may be carried in flexi tanks. Now I come to the same question. Why didn't we see flexi tanks in the IMDG code as a kind of packaging or tank to carry goods? What do you think? Do you have any idea? I will show you some more pictures. We should, of course, if we use a flexi tank in a CTU, we have to cover inside of the CTU with a liner, and also during filling and unloading a flexi tank, the left-hand door of the CTU should be kept closed to support the inserted barrier, you see? Also, after filling, a flexi tank warning label should be attached to the left-hand door. We don't open the left-hand door just to keep it secure. The filling or unloading should be done only from the right-hand side door. This is the rule for safety. Here is the answer to the question. The transport of dangerous goods in flexi tanks is prohibited. That's why. We don't see it in the IMDG code as a package or tank. During transport, the contents of a flexi tank will be subject to dynamic forces, as I told you before, acting upon the boundaries of the CTU and may cause damage or complete failure to the container which is carrying that. So thus, the mass of the liquid in the flexi tank should not exceed a value talked with the operator, CTU operator, and also application of, sometimes they put lashings. Every 2 meters, lashings should be applied. It's a recommendation. Also, what does non-regulated mean? Perhaps I should explain that. Non-dangerous cargo. Non-regulated means non-dangerous, not chemically dangerous goods. They are not dangerous chemically. CTU with liners, you see, for bulk cargo, solid bulk cargo. You have to protect your CTU. Depending on the internal friction, I will show you some pictures. You know what? We can perhaps make an angle to unload or load a container, but it is strictly forbidden just to position it up 90 degrees for filling or unloading, okay? This is a rule. This is a rule taken by UNEC. I have it as a reference in my files. This is strictly forbidden. CTUs on RoRo ships, of course, they should be on RoRo ships be secured to the ship, supported by a trestle or similar device like these lashings are needed. Railway wagons should be equipped with securing points. Here you see securing points on the ferries with chains and tensioning devices. You see the stoppers over there on the ferry boat, rail ferry. Now we come to arrival checking, and this is one of the most important perhaps chapters for us, because we will see again, like in chapter 1, part 1 of the IMDG code, the approval plates. Arrival, checking and positioning of CTUs. We have some checks. When the CTU arrives, we should make some checks. First check is the approval plates, exterior checks, interior checks, and cleanliness. Now, you already know the safety approval plate has to be subject to CSC, of course, Convention for Safe Containers, should be permanently affixed to the rear of the freight container, as we see here. The most important information for the packer especially is the maximum gross mass, as we see here, the allowable stacking load, as we see here, the certification data, the safety approval words, CSC safety approval. These should be written on the approval plate, the date of manufacture. The freight container should only be used with a CSC approval plate in international transport. In international traffic, there are two rules like this. One, the approval plate. Second, the seal. In international traffic, we need the approval plate and the seal. In national transport, they are not obligatory. As an alternative, we might see this ASAP code. It means Approved Continuous Examination Program. As an alternative, the owner operator of the freight container may execute an approved continuous examination program where the freight container is frequently inspected at every or major interchange. It is more frequent than the usual 5-year and 2.5-year checks. It might be at every major interchange. So, if there is no ASAP mark, and if the next examination date is already elapsed or is before the expected arrival time of the freight container, the freight container should not be used in intermodal or international traffic. Either it should have the safety approval plate and the dates are okay. For example, it's produced in 2013. This is the first time it is used and no harm done, the first periodic inspection will be after 5 years. And then every 2.5 years. First 5, then 2.5. But it may also have this ASAP code, then in every or major interchange, perhaps more frequently. Okay? I would like to show you, it's not in the CTU code, but I think it will be with the new amendment or so. The safety approval plate is usually a combined data plate. You must have seen this. The CSC safety approval is here. We might have here customs seal, some information with the customs, and we can have timber treatment code. I will talk about timber treatment as well. And some information about the owner of the CTU. This is called a combined data plate. Tomorrow, most probably, we shall see this one. Maximum gross mass. Maximum gross mass was given, you remember, on the plate. And also it's printed on the rear wall, you see, on the right generally. We can see the maximum gross written over there. The CTU code says if there is a non-compliance or a DAPT, the value on the CSC plate should be referred. Net mass payload is the P. We can see it here. Net weight payload is described as the maximum mass of cargo that a container can carry. The payload. We can find the payload by subtracting the tare mass. It is written here, tare mass of the container, plus mass of additional attached items, TG, plus TS, mass of the securing and bracing materials, from what? From the gross mass, maximum gross mass of the container. So we find the payload, the net mass. Allowable stacking mass is another term, very important one. It is the stacking capability of the container or the CTU. Freight containers built to the provisions of ISO 1496 have required to withstand a minimum of superimposed load of 192,000 kilograms. If they are below that value, they are not unrestricted, suitable for sea transport, and require special storage on board the ship. Why? Because if it is not declared, what happens? A heavy container will come on top of that and it will collapse. Care should be taken with these. So the shipper should contact and instruct the shipping line. We see markings, approval plates part. We see in Annex 4, swap bodies and road trailers, tank data plates, European rail wagon marks in detail. We can go and check. Now I come to exterior checks for labels, placards, marks and signs from the previous use of the CTU should be removed, of course. No distortions, cracks or bends in the framework. The integrity of the CTU should be well. These are visual checks, exterior. Lots of checks. I have just taken one or two of them. For the interior checks, the doors should be open enough to allow the internal atmosphere before entering the CTU to regularize with the ambient. We should wait a little. We should be careful. Animal and insects should not enter the CTU. Interior checks should ensure the CTU is free from major damage. No liquids or persisting stains on flooring and sidewalls. The CTU is weatherproof unless clearly designed otherwise. Cargo tie-down cleats or rings are in good condition. Cleanliness is, of course, a prerequisite for the CTU to be packed. Also, following the receipt of it, the packer should prevent recontamination. It is clean, but during packing, some insects or some other plants may enter the CTU. Recontamination is that the packer should prevent that. In Annex 6, for recontamination, there are lots of detailed information. For example, it talks about lights which repel insects. Low pressure sodium lights and the LED lights are best for repelling insects from the container during loading at night. positioning of CTUs for packing, there is wheeled operation and grounded operation. Wheeled operation, we have to be careful that the brakes should be applied and wheels should be choked, and also a fixed support or an adjustable support would be convenient for safety, because a forklift will go inside. In grounded operation, proper lifting equipment is required. The ground that the freight container stands on should be a firm, flat, well-drained surface, clear of any debris, soil, plant, etc. And safe access should be provided. A bridging unit is needed here for shocks, for preventing shocks and dropping off the cargo or the person in the forklift truck. Poor daylight conditions may require additional lighting. Yes, this is the summary for that. And we come now chapter 9, packing cargo into CTUs. The packers should ensure that the packing process is planned and the cargo is evenly distributed in the CTU. Measures are taken to prevent the contamination by plants and pests. Incompatible cargoes are segregated. The maximum permitted payload is not exceeded. Restrictions for concentrated loads and eccentricity of the center of gravity are complied with. The cargo and securing materials comply with the international standards for phytosanitary measures number 15. This is important because if a CTU is destined to a country with wood treatment quarantine regulations, all wood in the unit, packing and cargo should comply with the international standards for phytosanitary measures number 15, ISPM 15 standard. The phytosanitary mark, perhaps you might have seen this. There are different types of treatments. Why is this treatment? To prevent insects and other things, living things that we don't want to want in the container, of course. Here, this is the mark, phytosanitary mark. In excess, we write the country code according to ISO. In 000, we put the producer treatment provider, and in place of YY, Y and Y, is the treatment code written. If we see there, HT, in Turkey we only use HT, heat treatment. MB, metal bromide, you know it's a very, very toxic gas, fumigation with metal bromide. If you see SF, fumigation with sulfur chloride, and you may also see DH, heat treatment using dielectric heat. And one last thing, some countries in Europe may want this treatment plus as well, DB, debarking, peeling of the bark of the wood as well. The wood products, it's called debarking. IPPC here, you see, is the International Plant Protection Convention of the United Nations, regulation of wood packaging. Treatment should be carried out before CTU is packed, of course. In situ treatment is not permitted. Here are samples. For example, you can see here, what is this? From Great Britain. What is this treatment? What was that? DB, debarking, remember? And HT, heat treatment. And this one is DB, debarking, plus MB, metal bromide. When we come to principles of packing, I'm running. Is it okay? Are we okay? Do we have any questions? Asha, stop for a minute. Any questions? Is it okay? Is it flowing well? Are we happy? Or would you like me to stop and ask you to listen to your questions if you have any? I will be very happy to answer. I would appreciate questions, yes. Do we need?
Certified quality or competent authority to responsible for checking the content?
It depends on the national regulation. We have the agricultural ministry for this in Turkey. The ministry, of course, there are authoritative bodies for this treatment. And the fumigators sometimes do this, or the agricultural ministry allocates some companies for heat treatment. If it's because we don't use metal bromide after all. Any other? Shall we? We have a few minutes more. Do we have any other questions? If not, I will continue, okay? Harry? Thank you. Of course, the load should be uniformly stored in the container from in the longitudinal and the transversal directions. In the vertical direction, you know, this is a very simple rule. Yesterday, Captain Ufelen told us in the 7.3 part of the CQ IMDG code. In the vertical direction, the center of gravity should be below half of the height of the space of the unit. There's another rule that we see in the CTU code. This is called 60 to 40 rule. As a rule of thumb, this can be taken as 60% of the cargo's total mass in the 50% of the freight container's length. Namely, we can give some examples. For example, if we have 10 tons, or let's say 20 tons, how many tons can we put in the 60% side? Because it's at most in the half of the container, how many tons can be stored if we have a load of 20 tons altogether? Yeah, sure. Here could be 12, the other side 8. But if this is 7 and the other part is 13, there is danger. Yeah, the container could be cracked, collapsed, or just deteriorated. So this rule is the limit at the maximum, 40 to 60. There are also some diagrams for road trucks and trailers, also for rails, rail wagons. There are special according to speed. S is for speed, SS for high speed. And then we come to packing and securing materials. strong enough for the intended purpose, in good order and condition without tears, etc. They have to be very strong and secure. And we have some damage and separating materials like gunny cloth, paperboard, natural fiber mats. We can put them in between void areas, empty areas. Cardboard sheeting, plastic sheeting, friction and friction increasing material. Do we want to increase friction when we secure before transport or decrease it? Of course, sure. We want to increase friction with the load, with the cargo and the stowage surface. The higher the friction, the better, because it will prevent moving to a degree. Yeah, we aim either a tight stow or a secured stow. Tight stow is this, from panel to panel, tightly stowed, or secured stow is individually secured. For example, this one, from the side. You see the bolt here? They secured it like this. This is staying like this one. It's normal, yeah. The roof and the floor is here, but they put it sideways. And the car, they are securely stowed, not from wall to wall. There are empty spaces and lashing is required this time. Strong lashing is required. Why? Because we cannot use the rear or side panels of the CTU for getting some support. The main principle is to prevent the movement of cargo. Blocking techniques, there are many using damaged materials with wood, H-block, rigid separation, putting strong walled cargo unit between. We just leave the empty space in the middle. We can use also airbags, depending on the cargo. Blocking, bracing, shoring material, timber frames, like this, shoring arrangements, braces, damage bags, and also there are some methods for the second row. We can heighten some thresholds so that these won't move, okay? You can put some pallets under so that you can heighten the first row, the second row won't move. There are some tricks for that, or you can use lashing. Lashing techniques are given: leg lashing, top-over lashing, spring lashing. We have lots of lashing material. I will show you one by one. Fiber ropes, wire ropes. They are of a typical standards. They have typical standards. Some wire rope clips to help securing. Web lashings, steel bands, modular lashing systems, and also some different rope lashings. For road transport, gripping tackle, sea transport, this is it. They are generally long linked chains. And also in road and rail transport we use this long link chains with shortening hooks. Tight stow is like this, or like this. Packages cross tie with the pipes, the side walls. We should be careful because the load could, harm the side panels of the CTU. We should be careful. Uniform parcels like drums. Captain mentioned about that yesterday. The liquid goods under dry goods. We now know why. Not to damage the dry cargo. Tight stow again. There's a formula. I will not go into detail, but I want you to understand the approach. This left side is the outside external force on the cargo. This is the resistance, wall resistance of the CTU in a tight stow. We have the panels of the CTU, right? The container. Plus the friction force of the cargo itself. These two forces should be bigger than external force so that the cargo won't move. Do we get it? The right side should be bigger. They are the forces rejecting, resisting the external force. If a balance cannot be satisfied, we should use friction increasing method. If we have again a tight stow, but the CTU has weak, very weak panels, what shall we do? We have wall resistance, but it is weak. We have friction force of the cargo, and we have to put additional securing, perhaps by lashing. Okay? We need additional force against forces acting on the cargo. These are external forces. If we have now we have secured stow. No panels, no side structure. These are project cargoes. They are individually on the platform or flat rack. Now, sliding and if necessary tipping, we have to have lashings plus blocking also. Blocking and lashing. This is the formula. Only friction force of the load itself, no panels to support, and also additional securing force just to resist the external forces. This is for sliding, this is for tipping, to prevent sliding the cross, and this one for tipping. Different types of lashings you will see later in your presentation copies. You can just continue with extra knowledge in the CTU code itself and the annexes. Highlights. There are two rules, dear friends. CTUs with strong cargo space boundaries, like a GP container, we can block. We can make a tight stow. We can block. We can use block. Minimize cargo mobility. We may not need any lashing, but with individual securing, like the project cargos, we need blocking plus lashing. This is the rule. Evaluation of securing arrangements we can find in sea transport in the IMO CSS code. What do? We evaluate and calculate if the lashings are enough by the help of Annex 13 of the IMO CSS code. Annex 13 for sea transport. European standard EN, European norm, 12,195 for road transport, you can refer. And for railways, we have the RIV 2000 Annex 2 for rail transport. And you can see CSS code here. Annex 3 gives all the calculations for the lashings and everything, so that you can assess if the arrangement securing arrangement is okay or not. Also, practical tests are done in some Australia, Germany, some other countries. They are the most known countries for these tests, perhaps in Netherlands as well, in other countries. These are practical tests to see if it is okay, the secure is okay or not. And we have wonderful, amateurish, but incredibly creative and effective stowage examples. I love them, so I will share them with you. You know, wonderful, wonderful. No theoretical thing, but it's okay, you see, with trial and error. Wonderful securing arrangements. And look at this one. And look at this one. This is, do you know which this refers to? A forklift truck used overcapacity. Instead of the load, the truck, the forklift truck, sometimes, you know, will go this way. This is an example for that. We have additional advice on dangerous goods. IMDG code apply. For example, in USA, they are not a member of the APR because it's mostly European countries, also the countries doing commerce with Europe. But in USA, there are some national regulations, like this one. Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations. Yeah, CFR 49. There can be other national regulations together with international, but for sea transport of the packaged dangerous goods, the provisions of the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code, IMDG code, apply for all countries. Whenever an intermodal transport doesn't include international by sea, compliance with the national rules is okay. But whenever there is international transport by sea, IMDG code apply. On completion of packings, we have to check seals and etc. I will come to a part which is very important. Container vehicle packing certificate is mentioned also here. You see, for the packaged goods, for the packaged dangerous goods in a container, not in a tank, you remember from yesterday, container vehicle packing certificate is necessary. Advice on receipt, I will show you a few slides on the, in a terminal, what should be taken care of when a CTU arrives on a terminal, especially for you. Before it goes onto a ship, what should the terminal do? Match carrier's documentation against the hauliers to prevent illegal shipments. Sorry, I was covering your side. Check the integrity of the CTU and its seal to prevent threats. Check the CTU number against documentation. Check the presence of placards markings containing DG. Verify against documentation. Verify the gross mass. And during the lifting of the CTU, be careful about the 40-60 rule. Sideline any CTU that appears to be unsound, unsafe. Check the lashings of non-enclosed CTUs. Check reefer temperatures against settings. Check reefer plugs and wires for defects prior to plugging. Also safety and security checks prior to entry. Whenever a receiver or consignee get the CTU, he should also document the CTU operator whether the CTU is in good condition. He should check from the exterior. If the CTU shows signs of high temperatures, he should take measures. Confirm that the CTU is as specified on the transport documentation and check the CTU identification number with the documentation. The terminal and also the receiver also should do the same thing. Inspect the seal if fitted. If the seal is missing, or show signs of tampering, identification number, or the cargo documentation, the receiver should notify customs or law enforcement authoritative bodies, because it's important. There's something going wrong with the CTU. If the seal is lost or broken, there might be some theft or some other things. External checks with the, there might be fumigation in that, or dry ice, cooler, suffocating, and lots of dangerous atmosphere with the fumigants, dry ice again, toxic gases. Sometimes shoes even during transport may give off some toxic gases, such as toluene, benzene, 1,2-dichloroethane. Also you may, the sign might fall off, the fumigation sign. If you see some things like that, tape applied to door gaskets, you should be suspecting that that CTU might have been fumigated. Okay, if you see some things like that, the ventilation gaskets are closed, so you might suspect it. Measuring gases, you can put just a solid tube through the door gaskets. The simplest way is to measure internal atmosphere if you have any ducts. Do not enter the CTU yet. Ventilation, natural or forced ventilation. Of course, forced ventilation is preferred. You see degassing door, I mentioned yesterday. Forced ventilation reduces the time, and if it has suitable filter like this, no harmful gases go out. It is filtered and no harmful substance is emitted outside. It is a great one to ventilate a container. Powerful fans and degassing doors. It's a gas recapture system. Another rule, I will finish in 10 minutes now. For metal bromide, phosphine and sulfuryl fluoride, a distance of minimum 20 meters all around the CTU should be set. I told you, in the ports, we isolate the container, and after gas measuring and weighting, also the person who opens the door of the container should have SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus with air tubes, okay? No inhalation from the outside. This one. Ventilation and then measure, and as I told you, the person should not get any air from outside, only from the air tube. Opening the doors, the cargo may come just over the person who opens the door. So a chain or simply a loose strap could be used, just opening the door a little so that to have a measure that the cargo doesn't fall off. Unpacking, and now I will come to training. Of course, the management of a facility should train all personnel responsible for planning, packing, and supervision of packing CTUs. There are main topics written over there. You can later go and just explore the details. And now we come to key requirements. The summary, okay? Do's and don'ts. Do arrange for a safe working environment. Do use safe handling equipment. You see, it's with the donkey, the same thing. This way. The load was too heavy and the forklift truck came up. Do use appropriate personal protective equipment. Do check that the CTU and any other cargo securing equipment are in sound condition, in good condition, and the proper CTU is chosen. Sorry. Do not smoke, eat, or drink during packing, securing, or unpacking. Do select the most suitable CTU type to accommodate for cargo to be intended for transport, reefer, platform, or a closed CTU. Do prepare a packing plan when necessary. Do select the securing methods best for the cargo, whether it is a tight stow or a secure stow. This is a secure stow, this is a tight stow. Do not exceed the permitted payload limits of the unit or the maximum allowed gross mass, according to the CSC and National Road and Rail regulations. Do distribute heavy cargo appropriately over the floor area. This is funny, it's not okay. So weak lashing, can you imagine? What should we use instead of closed cargo unit? What should we use for the stone blocks? What shall we use? We had seen the slide, remember? Either platform or flat racks are recommended for these stone blocks. Do observe all handling instructions and symbols. Do not build up irregular layers of packages. Do not store heavy goods on top of light goods. Do not store goods with tainting odors together with sensitive merchandise. Do not pack wet and damp goods if it can be avoided. Do not use securing or protection equipment which is incompatible with the cargo. When you pack dangerous goods, do check that all packages are properly marked and labeled for DG. Do pack dangerous goods according to the applicable dangerous goods regulations near the door of the CTU where possible, where you can reach easily. Okay? As stowing on deck, the most dangerous ones should be accessible easily. Do affix required placards, marks and signs on the exterior of the CTU. Do load with center of gravity correctly located on the CTU. We have talked about this. This is wrong and this is right. The center of weight should be below as possible. 40-60 rule, at maximum 60% of the cargo at 50% of the length at most. Do not concentrate heavy cargo on small areas of the floor. Do not load with eccentric load distribution. Do not pack incompatible goods which should be segregated. Do not pack damaged packages, of course not. Do fill void spaces when necessary. No space should be left so that the movement is prevented. We don't want the cargo to move. The movement causes harm, damage to the cargo and to the container. Do use, see here, both blocking and lashing. Lots of lashing and blocking. Also, they have used some friction increasing material. Do secure the cargo in a way that forces are distributed. Do secure each single loaded item independently. Do use non-slip surface material to refrain packages. Do use hooks and shackles to fasten where applicable. Do not secure the cargo with devices overstressing the structure. Do not over-tighten the securing devices so that the goods are damaged. Do not overstress securing devices. Do not fasten web lashings by means of knots. Knots decrease the maximum securing load, securing strength. We should not have any knots on web lashings. On completion of packing, do determine the correct gross mass of the CTU. Do affix a seal when required. Do include the CTU number, the correct gross mass, and when required, the seal number in the appropriate document. Do provide a packing certificate when required. Do check that the identification number on the CTU and when the CTU should be sealed, the seal number on the transport documentation. Do check the exterior of the CTU for leakage infestation. Do use proper equipment to cut the seal if affixed. Do ensure the CTU is safe to enter. Do open the CTU with caution as cargo might fall out with a chain or a cable-like thing so that you can be sure that the cargo won't fall onto you. Do record every package as it is removed, noting and marking and damages. Do remove all securing and protection material for reuse. Do clean the interior. Remove all traces of cargo, especially loose powders, grains or noxious materials, residues, everything, fumigants, unless otherwise agreed with the CTU operator. And please do remove all marks, placards, and signs regarding the previous consignment from the exterior of the CTU once it has been cleaned. Okay, thank you so much. This is a short summary. Yes.
For the railway, what we have to do.
Leaking as a receiver.
For example, CCM 1, 3, 7. What we have to do?
As a receiver or in the terminal. Most terminals, I think you also, have marine surveyors, contract with marine surveyors. You should not unload the container. If you unload without any rejection or proof, the damage will be on you, mostly. Depending on the agreement, but mostly. You should call the marine surveyor. He should have the report so that you will contact the sender and the carrier so that it won't stay with you, the damage, you can reject it. You have to prove it with photographs, with the report of the, also the marine surveyors.
So, what we have to protect? How many
For leakage, it depends on the dangerous route. For fumigation, it is given here as 20 meters in all directions.
Yeah, so for fumigation, it's a distance that you have to keep depending on the, yeah. But if you have leakages, you should prepare yourself by having a drip tray basically, or drip trays, that's so you have a leaking container, lift it up, put it in the drip tray, and show pictures if you like. So anything that leaks stays in the drip tray, it doesn't contaminate your short side anymore. And then you have a valve, you put a drum onto it, and anything that leaks out of it, that goes then in. And then of course in the end you need to clean it. So then you can control it. So the drip tray should basically contain 20,000 liters, able to contain, so that you can have the full. Yeah. If you take less, it's also normally it leaks slowly. So then you are in a position to drain the drip tray on a regular basis. So then you can do it, let's say, 1,000 or 2,000 liters. I'll see if I will be tomorrow, then most probably. I'll see if I can get some pictures out and have them somewhere on my laptop as an example and for involvement for kind of things. So the basic idea is to take the table like this, you put the container on it, there's a wall over here on all sides, so anything. Good. You take a simply metal, paint it, and if it's damaged after because there's an acid that damages the paint, afterwards you clean it, you remove the paint, you paint it again. Because you're not going to leave it for weeks. If you leave it for a long time, then of course there will be holes in it. Yeah? But if you leave, so basically you have a spill, or you leave from fire brigade, whatever, you clean it, you control it, you clean it, and then you check whether it's damaged, and then you fix it. In worst case, you have to buy a new one.
Thank you. We are going to take a coffee break about 10 minutes. We will come back here about 1445. Thank you. ครับผมก็ตอนนี้ประมาณบ่าย 2:35 นะครับก็10 นาทีนะครับเดี๋ยวจะได้เลิกทัน 4 โมงเย็นนะครับผมจากที่ทุกท่านสังเกตเห็นออกไปนอกหน้าต่างท้องฟ้าจะเริ่มสดใสนะครับเพราะว่าผมได้ทำการปักตะไคร้เรียบร้อยแล้วนะครับวันนี้ฝนน่าจะไม่ตกนะครับแล้วก็จะพยายามให้เลิก 4 โมงเย็นตรงตามกำหนดการนะครับขอบคุณมากครับ
Ja, dat was het, ja. Thanks, I'm fine. Is that cold? Or? It's cold.
don't know, I need to ask you. It takes time for her to digest all this information.
Dus wat zeg je dan voor om 12 o'clock te finish?
It will depend also on us how we wrap up the thing, no?
Ja. So you go to get a nice box around that. On the way to the car. Right measurements, it's a that's why you carry the big space.
I always carry that. I do like this because I don't trust myself how it's going to go back, so you need to look when I go with DAY3, I have two suitcases like that, and it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Not enough, and I have to reduce you cannot imagine the number of items like this in all shapes, unimaginable that he receives. And as soon as he receives, he just clicks and I take it, and I pass it to others, okay? But at the end is, I will see if I can show you the suitcase I came back from Mexico. Don't use his presents. Don't use his presents. It's bottles of whatever.
Nice. My name lived in Turkey. I said at home, my wife.
I can imagine because I have seen that.
Yeah.
did you think you need for all the CTU related instruments for a training? 1 day, 5 days?
I think in the full week.
Considering 1 day to on site to see the
You have to do some practical things.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. But it's they made it too big for my opinion. But
What in the CTU code? Last
yeah, big.
And he was quite objective in his particular to know how he is. And he said, well, she was a joke. Finally, terminated, but also everybody was pushing. And now, going to amendments. There are some good proposals. That's to improve. But I don't know. And during this time to there is a little bit of a mafia behind as well. A little bit of a mafia behind from the industry pushing to have something. Yes, exactly. And the ILO said, don't move with me. They don't want, and I told them, yeah, I understand but you only see it's not happy. And we thought we are not going anywhere. But they really abuse of the good faith of fire. This guy, I contracted him later on for the BGM. Yes, and it was so simple to make to write a report. He was not submitting the report, he was not submitting the report. Like we called him to IMO, like we want this. And we went to 5 countries and just want to give you an idea of how to do something. How what is the area they do not have. He gave a report that was really cool. Now he doesn't get his calling. Like, we should amend this. I said, yes, we don't. You are calling on behalf of who? And that's why ILO doesn't want to do anything. And they are right.
I think that should really look into it was small what we had before.
Yeah.
But
No, it's good that it became a code,
Yeah.
because it's well organized and everything. It's a good, it was a good, it was a good improvement. It's a good attempt to bring it. I don't know if mandatory, but
I mean that makes it difficult because how do you
yes,
implement that
and
mandatory? Because there are too many differences, so I think that's
no, it's not that very.
some countries will do it.
But at least you have something, and everybody can do its own.
Anybody who has the intention to set up trainings and to have program, you can use it for sure.
But to make it mandatory is not really like.
I would personally not agree with that one.
No, because it's not also the cup of tea of any administration. To regulate all kinds of but they can use it to regulate their own procedures in-house.
And certain some issues from car securing in Germany that they really up and put on top.
Yeah.
so, but I don't think so.
โอเคครับพี่ครับเดี๋ยวรบกวนคนที่อยู่ด้านนอกด้วยนะครับได้เวลาแล้วนะครับน้องๆที่อยู่ข้างนอกรบกวนตามพี่ๆเข้ามาข้างนอกนะครับ มีท่านใดยังไม่ได้หนังสือเชิญมาเป็นทางการไหมครับผู้แทนอธิบดีกรมโรงงานอุตสาหกรรมอยู่ไหมครับผู้แทนจากสมาคมเจ้าของเรือไทยมีไหมครับอยู่ไหมครับผู้แทนกลุ่มบริษัท PTG Energy อยู่ไหมครับไม่เป็นไรครับเดี๋ยวรอครบเดี๋ยวผมประกาศทีนะครับ So I think we shall begin. Yeah. Continue on this afternoon session. Is International Maritime Solid Bulk Cargo Code or IMSBC Code by Captain Rafael Uvelen. Captain, please.
Thank you. So, 700 plus pages. So we could continue with 2 days full time on it if you like. But now, yeah, 2 days. That's the minimum to go. If you want to read this, now, seriously, the code, and I'll show you on screen, of course, in a minute. There is first of all, this is not only the IMSBC code, but it's also the supplement. And the big part of the IMSBC code are the schedules of all the commodities. And of course, that I'll explain one, and that should explain basically all of them. And then you have 250 pages one. So I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but before 4 o'clock, I think we will all be ready. So, for the IMSBC code, this is not packed cargo. Up to now we were talking in IMSBC code on packed cargo, now it is bulk. One major flow of cargo, which is grain, is not part of the IMSBC code, because that is dealt with in the grain code, and that is something we are not going to discuss today. What I've done is, in many cases in the slides, I've shortened the text to make it easy to explain. But if you really want to go for, you really have to look into the code. So you can't say, you've said this on the slide, and for that reason I did it wrong. You have to go to the code always in the end. As you can see, I sometimes use the presentation also in the Netherlands, because I don't think there will be anybody here who speaks Dutch to me today. In the past, and I don't have a picture of that one, which is a pity, but in the past we used to have the BC code, which was not mandatory, and a lot of bulk carriers, well, they had it on board most probably, but they didn't open the book, they simply loaded cargo. So as of 2009, we had the IMSBC code agreed basically, and it became mandatory in 2011. That's in the end, after the 6th edition we have now in front of us, and that is twice as big, roughly, as the code in 2011. If you look at the back page of the code, that's basically what you see here. In 2011 it entered into force, and as of that date it was mandatory under the SOLAS Convention. Yeah, similar to the IMDG code in the past. You also have additional information, so it's not only the bulk carrier that the code is dealing with, but in the supplement you also see for the terminals that load and discharge bulk cargoes, how they should do that in a safe way. And again, similar as in the IMDG code, you also have guidance on how to fumigate cargoes on the bulk carrier. So you can fumigate before you put the cargo in, and then you can fumigate afterwards. But you have to be careful because when you fumigate holes with cargo, that means that you have to measure continuously that the gas is not going into the accommodation and walking spaces. That's all described in the supplement of the code. So you'll see that also later. The latest changes were not that much, but in the beginning there were big changes, schedules changed, a lot of schedules or commodities were added, and that's still ongoing. If you want to ship a new commodity, it takes you some time before it will be added into IMSBC code. Yeah, so the history was that nobody was really following the BC code, but now because it's mandatory as IMSBC, as Port Authority you can check whether everybody is in compliance, and you also have a real tool to make sure it's happening. It's mainly intended for the master and the deck officers, but the loading of the commodity, of course, they need to provide the right information to the master. So basically any producer of bulk cargoes should be aware of the code as well. Question, is this also part of the IMSBC code? It's bulk cargo. But that's a complete different bulk cargo that we're going to discuss indeed. Yeah. So we have a few abbreviations, a bit more than you now see on the screen, but some relevant, really relevant ones. The angle of repose, I'll show you some pictures afterwards. The BC code, which is now obsolete. The bulk cargo shipping name, we're going to pay some attention to that one, how to get there. The IMSBC code, well, replacement of the BC code. ISPS, we all know, it's also in the IMSBC code, but again, I'm not going to play it. We discussed that already with the IMDG code. Material hazardous in bulk, that is also, that's reflected also in the IMDG code. So those products are, if they are in packed cargo, they're not dangerous, but if you put them in bulk, they are dangerous. So that's a bit of a grey area between the two codes. And then transportable moisture limit. The biggest accidents we have seen over the last 10 years, 15 years, was because the cargo, the bulk cargo became liquefied, and then the ship turned over, and again, I have a list of that one as well. Can you mention a few risks in relation to dry bulk cargo? Listing of the ship, yeah. And what's causing the listing? Yeah. You can load it first of all in the wrong way. That makes it listing. And the other one is indeed the liquefaction that the cargo becomes liquefied and then starts moving, and then the ship starts listing. And if you're lucky, it stops at that moment. And if you're not lucky, the listing turns the ship all over and it goes down to the bottom of the sea. What else? Braking of the ship, yeah. If you load it, especially if you have heavy cargo, for example ferrosilicon or something like it with an average weight of 3 or 4, and you load it too fast or in the wrong position, then you can break the ship alongside. And if you load it in the wrong way and you go into bad weather, it could also cause that the ship breaks. What else? It's a bit like this, still the IMDG code. Yeah? You still can get toxic gases out of the cargo, which can kill you. It can be corrosive. Loss of stability. Yeah, so you braking, we already had. You can have an explosion. Yeah, either during loading because of the dust. So you get a dust explosion, or because the flammable vapors coming out of the product. And when you have an explosion, you have a fire and the other way around. So that's exactly the same as in the IMDG code as well. Loss of oxygen. A lot of products, they slowly absorb the oxygen. Yeah. And then if you go in the cargo hold, of course, then yeah, so it might be the last thing that you do. Intoxication, for 2 reasons. It can be coming out of cargo, but it can also be because the cargo was fumigated. Dust. If you don't wear a mask, and then not the mask you're wearing at this moment, but the right dust mask, you get the dust into your lungs. And depending on what it is, maybe you're only coughing a few days, but if it's the wrong stuff, it corrodes, it's corrosive into your lungs, then you damage your lungs. And the dust, that's more for the ship itself, but the dust can damage all kinds of materials, equipment on board the ship. So your cranes may not work anymore. It starts rusting or corroding all kinds of equipment and materials on board the ship. Incidents. Yeah. Bulk carrier carrying nickel ore sinks off the Philippines. 60 crew members saved out of 26, which means we have 10 dead people on that one. This is a Dutch report from the Dutch authorities where they investigated the Dutch vessel. Lack of oxygen resulted in, I think, 2 people died on that one. Bulk carrier with fertilizer. Not much to do directly with the IMSBC code, but it shows clearly that bulk cargo, the cargo itself was falling apart, basically. It reacted, and it looked like she wasn't really on fire, but it is more because the cargo falls apart, it's more smoke and coming out of it. Yeah, although the IMSBC code is now mandatory for 13 years almost, no, 12 years, it's still not stopping completely all incidents. Yeah. This is a list, and this is not the last one. I haven't updated it for 1 or 2 years. Yeah. The list will be updated on the website later on. But quite a few people were killed because the ship sank or broke. You see a lot, many times, nickel ore. Yeah, but that's not the only product, as you can see. So all products basically needs to be checked and controlled, and that's why we highlight that later on during the presentation. So the structure of the code, very shortly, you have a resolution, you have forward, and then section 1 to 4 up to 13. And I go step by step, we go through that. And then we have appendixes. So resolution 268/85 adopted the IMSBC code, and it also dealt with that basically every 2 years it will be amended. And it also made clear that the BC code is not to be used anymore. It's replaced by the mandatory IMSBC code. And resolution 269 arranged that via SOLAS it became mandatory. Document of compliance, same applies by the way for an IMSBC code cargo. You should never see class 6.2 and class 7 on the document of compliance, because they are regulated in a different way. So does it mean that if the document of compliance is not showing class 6.2 or 7, that you're not allowed to ship it? It's simply not part of this requirement. It also says in the foreword that not everything is mandatory. Yeah, so the code itself is mandatory. Similar again to the IMDG code, some items are not, and that is mentioned over here. And this is IMO language, so again, same, shall is mandatory, should and may is less strict. Introductionary note. So, chapter 1 is divided into this, and one of the main things that you need to know a little bit is again what I also did with the IMDG code, is you need to know what you're talking about. So the definitions, what is it exactly? Cargo is not listed in this code, we'll describe that a bit later. Yeah, most easiest is if the cargo is listed in the code, then you go to the specific page, it's an alphabetical sequence, and it describes exactly what you need to follow. 2.1, cargo distribution. Before loading, the master needs to get the right information on the type of cargo, the weight of the cargo, and the planned sequence how the cargo is to be loaded. Yeah. And then linked into, that's the master's responsibility to check whether indeed it fits in with the stability of the ship. Shifting of the cargo can be prevented by bulkheads. That's quite often not done on bulk cargoes, but it's more for what you see that a lot in with the crane code, but you can do quite often as well with other IMSBC code products. If you have high density cargoes, yeah, we mentioned it already in the risk. You run the risk that the ship breaks, you run the risk that there are damages to the ship, and if loaded incorrectly, the ship might be listed. Even if that's only alongside, that still could be dangerous. 2.2 deals with cargo hold inspection, so is the hold ready for it? So in some cases you need to close the bilges, because if the cargo gets into the bilges, then your bilge pipelines will be filled with the cargo and then that will be blocked. If the ventilation is running, it must be running in a way that if you have dust, that the dust is not going into the accommodation. Because not only it becomes dirty, but it also becomes unhealthy. Safety for personnel and ship, that's part 3. Yeah. If you can follow it a little bit also on screen as well as in the book. because the screen is only very limited information. Yeah, so there again are the hazards that we discussed already before. They are described in more detail. Yeah. It's more issue for a flammable atmosphere. That for some cargoes it's very clear that you're not normally you're not allowed to smoke at all, but in those cases no open fires, no smoking to prevent any flammable or explosive results. And it gives also guidance on the cargo on the fumigation. So there it is described what you need to do to make sure that the fumigants are not going to places where people are walking or sleeping. Yeah. Take into account the details of the product that you're loading, and based on that, you prepare that the operation is done safely. In relation to that, you have oxygen depleting, emission of toxic gases, fumes, and self-heating. And then we had, for example, yesterday we discussed, day before yesterday we discussed calcium carbide. So you have a few cargoes, ferrosilicon is also one. If you add water to it, and water or humidity only, it emits toxic gases. And I had about 2 years ago a case that the cargo became a little bit wet. That wet reacted with the cargo, and then all the paint in the hold was gone afterwards. And of course the ship tried to put forward a claim because they needed to repaint the holds. That's a little bit what it mentioned in the last part. Yeah, corrosion to skin, etc. But it also corrosion to the vessel. This is what I mentioned shortly before. Yeah. All the spaces around the cargo hold. Yeah, so if you have a pipeline tunnel around the ship to the foreship, if you have in the foreship near the anchors, etc., you have a space where people walk. The gases can come from the hold into those spaces. And if they get into the pipeline tunnel, they can go into the engine room, and worst case, they can also go to the accommodation. So you need to. One of the items I ran into, a ship was stopped in Rotterdam, and they said, well, we have 10 tubes that we used for checking this. And then we said, okay, well, you can use it only once. Your ship was sailing for 3 weeks. So you only have done it the last 3 days, so you for sure have not done it on a daily basis. And basically you should do it twice or 3 times a day. So either you have a gas measuring tool which you continuously can use, or if you use those tubes that you break with those, you put air through it in order to measure the gases, then you need maybe 50 or 100 tubes in order to do a 3-4 week trip. Cargoes itself, a lot of it, especially the forestry kind of things, the agriculture, they deplete oxygen. So again, if you want to go in, so that's not a problem for the rest of the ship, but if you want to go in the hold, do discharge or in order to check whether the cargo is still safe, you need to make sure that there is sufficient oxygen in it. Yeah. Enclosed space is also in the supplement. You can also find in the internet a lot of documents on it. P&I clubs regularly send out messages on enclosed spaces. Any space that is not really open is considered an enclosed space. So that is not only the holds, but it could be the engine room, it could be a pump room, it could be under the foreship, the bosun store. Yeah. As long as there's no ventilation running continuously, you should consider it as an enclosed space. Every year, not only on bulk areas, every year we can read 10, 20 people dying because of enclosed space incidents. I think it's one of the biggest issues of people dying on board ships. And not only on board ships, I mean, shoreside, same thing happens. Appropriate gas detector, yeah, ideally either the shipper who produced the cargo, they know what the right measuring tool is, or you have a multimeter that basically measures all the gases that you can have, but they are very expensive. Yeah. But if there is a risk to that cargo, they must somehow supply, whether it's a charterer, yeah, or the cargo owner, but somebody needs to supply that meter because the ship itself usually doesn't have it. Ventilation. If there are toxic gases, basically you should ventilate in order to get rid of them. But it's not always possible. We have products that do not allow it, so that will be in the individual schedule that will be mentioned. But if there are toxic gases evaporating and you are not allowed to ventilate for whatever reason, then of course you can never go out in that hold till you've found a way around it. Yeah, in some cases, heavy weather, heavy rain, if you ventilate, that water gets through the ventilation, will get into the hold, and if the cargo is reacting with water, then toxic gases will be gone, but you will have a fire or an explosion because the water gets into contact with the cargo. Ventilation, holds, openings, those are described. I mean, normally the ship itself is there. Yeah. If they are in the wrong position and the ship is getting listed, it should not be that via the ventilation opening, seawater gets into the hold, because that would mean that the ship sinks. That's described in the load line convention, but there is also a reference here that points out once again that you should pay attention to that one. Now, repeating of what was mentioned already before, whatever ventilation you have, whether it's running, whether it's mechanical, or whether it's on the wind, you should take into account that gases coming out of it are toxic, and they should never get into places. Either you stop the places, people are not allowed to get them back anymore, or you make sure that the wind or whatever removes the gases straight from the ship. Spontaneously heating cargo, if that's happening, and you put the ventilation on it, it heats even faster. Yeah, so then in many cases, you try to stop the ventilation, because if there's no ventilation, then the self-heating will stop, depending on the product. Fumigation. We had an incident 2 years ago in the Netherlands, a bulk carrier, Seago bulk carrier, delivered grain into the Netherlands in Amsterdam, and it was gas measuring, and they didn't find anything, so they loaded it into smaller boats for upriver transport. And 2 days later, the captain, owner of that ship, got hospitalized together with his wife because there was toxic gas coming out of the cargo. Turned out to be is those phosphine pills. They were in the cargo, and by loading it into the barge, it became reactive again, and the gases came out of it. So they tried to prevent using pills in the cargo. So ideally, you put the aluminium phosphide, you put it on the cargo, then you can easily remove it before you start discharging. That makes it a lot safer for the other side. Yeah. But if you load it and every time you throw in a few pills, that itself works better. Okay. Yep. Fuel guns, exactly the same risk what you have, as I mentioned before, toxic gases coming out of the cargo. So again, you have to do measuring, you have to warn your crew, yeah, and if you are a port authority, you should check once in a while, yeah, I'm not saying shall, but you should check whether the crew is aware of it. Yeah. One of the things we had in Rotterdam, for example, we went on board the ship and we said, okay, you have a gas meter, yeah. Can you explain please how it works? I have to get the manual. And you say you have been using it for 3 weeks. Yeah? So those are easy checks when you do for state control or something similar to see if the ship is in compliance. Yeah? 8-hour intervals. Well, nobody can check on that one, although you should note it down into the journal. So you ask them to show it, that I've done it like that. Yeah. Personally, I don't mind so much where the 8 hours, but if it turns out that they've done it only once every 3-4 days, they've been playing with the lives of the crew. Assessment of acceptability of the cargo. Yeah. Described over here. Certificates of test, how to sample cargo. So the cargo is on the shore and you need to know whether it's, for example, whether it's wet, yes or no. Procedures are described on how to do sampling. That's also in the supplement. There's a much longer set of pages. If you sample and, for example, the purpose is to check whether the cargo is dry enough to be shipped, and we have rain like we had yesterday, then the sampling is worthless afterwards, because of the rain there's a lot of water added to the cargo. So that's also described over here. If you have stockpiles that are 15 meters, 10, 15, 20 meters high on the seas, it's dangerous to do it, because if you don't know what you're doing, the cargo can start moving and you get the cargo over yourself and well, end of story. So that's described. At the same time, it describes also how to do it properly in order to make if you only sample from the top side, down below it will be much wetter, usually. Yeah, so that's also explained over here. Stowage plan. On a bulk area, it's pretty easy. I mean, on a container ship, you may have 600 different positions for containers with dangerous goods. Here you will have, well, maybe you have 8 holes or 9 holes. And quite often, it's only one cargo, one type of cargo that they have. But in some trades, they have 3 or 4 different loads in the holes. Based on what is in each hold, you make a response plan. For this cargo, we need to do that. And for the other one, we need to act a little bit different. Document compliance, I already mentioned. Now, it should describe whether that cargo, especially if it's hazardous in bulk only, whether it's allowed to be loaded in the hold. If you have a cargo that is registered, this can be filled in automatically. If the cargo is not in the IMSBC code, you use this form, you fill it in as good as possible. That's for the shipper to arrange. And then he sends it to the authorities, and they need to approve it, and before it's approved, you are not allowed to load it. So that's general information, not so relevant, but whether it's the right, whether it's a Group A cargo or Group B, we'll get to that in more detail later. Yeah. All this information must be in compliance, so the master should check it, and if the cargo is not in the code, then there must also be a certification from the authorities that you're allowed to ship it. Do we know what a Group A cargo is? Can we try to find it? Probably it will be in the definitions. Dangerous here with work. Does that give you the answer what Group A is? You thought that it's easy because it's on the screen 423, but that's not answering the question. The question is, what is Group A? What is Group B? Yeah, so you have to find it in the definitions or in the right subchapter. It's in many places, but yeah, so in the right, that's the right place to find it, isn't it? That is a Group A, but what you're looking for is what does it mean? So you need to have a description, a definition,